Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and welcome to a new year. It's 2018. I'm glad to be back on the podcast, and today I have a new guest. My guest is Suzanne, and she runs the Etsy shops, Smirking Goddess Studio and Suzanne Urban Art. Suzanne, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Ijama. So nice to be here.
Yes.
I was really flattered when you invited me to be on this.
Yes, I'm always kind of trolling around on Etsy looking for interesting guests to have on the podcast. So I'm glad to have you on and talk about what you do. But before we start, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Oh, sure. My name is Suzanne Urban. I'm from Connecticut. I am an illustrator and a writer, both published as a gag writer and an illustrator. And now I sell my work on Etsy. I have two shops, and actually we have a third, which is my husband's shop. We have a museum here in Connecticut. My husband, it's on vintage hi-fi, and my husband opened it in 2014. And I often make magnets and pinbacks for our museum gift shop, and they also sell. So I have my fingers in too many pies, but that's what happens when you're a Gemini and a writer and an artist.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so much in there that I want to touch on. First, did you say you were a gag writer?
Yes. Years ago, I used to sell gag lines around a full-time job to a greeting card company. But they were very picky, it was a lot of input of time, and I really didn't have the focus back then. I came from a family of writers. My dad was a published writer in the engineering field. My sister was a published writer for a while. My sister and my mom were English lit majors, so it sort of rubbed off on me through osmosis, and I guess always did well in English in school. So I love to connect with people through humor, and I say in my bios on Etsy, when pencil hits the paper, humor leaks out, and I don't know why. And I don't know why. Some people would think I'm kind of serious, and I can be. My husband always thinks I could lighten up more, but this is what comes out of me. So it's probably a message from the universe to me to lighten up, and I in turn share it with others.
Well, your buttons are very funny. It doesn't seem, you don't seem uptight at all just from reading some of the lines that you have on there.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, but if for people, especially in the gig economy, looking for different gigs to do just, to make a living or make ends meet, one of the things that comes up often is writing for greeting card companies. And you transitioned out of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets leaving that, since it appears that it's something that can be secure and moving out on your own?
I don't think it's really secure nowadays, freelancing. In fact, I don't know. Well, I do have a friend whose daughter, she and her husband are comedy writers in LA. So they're gainfully employed. But beyond that, I don't know anything about that. When I freelanced, mostly it was for illustration, which if someone approached me, I do, if I think the job is in tune with my authentic style that I'm developing, which is different from the commercial style I had a few years back, I'll take the job. But I think in some ways it's easier to be an entrepreneur and sell online, because if you've had the experience of being art directed or being directed by an editor, and you've learned from that, I think your next step should be entrepreneurship. Because when you work under a corporate publishing office, you're answering to a team of people. And sometimes that means it does mean what you create is more watered down. And that's why you need venues like Etsy, so the authentic voice can come through. Okay. And that's why I'm on Etsy.
Okay. Now, so currently, between you and your husband, you have 3 Etsy shops.
Yes. Unfortunately, I've been ignoring my second one, which is my art, and the museum one. But this is the year we're going to gear up and start putting more focus on those shops. Okay. It's time. It gets easy when another shop is busy. Plus, I have other things going on. In the spring and summer, I have a gardening business, a little sideline gardening business. And that got kind of busy last year. And then I got poison ivy really bad, and I really couldn't be on Etsy. Couldn't type.
Oh, no.
Yeah, or create. Yeah. So but my goal is this is the year that I really start pushing forward. 3 years ago, I quit my day job, which had a terrible commute, and went straight into just working on Etsy. And at that time, my sister became very ill and passed away. And I've had a couple of other losses, and that one caught us off guard. And it really took over a year, 2016, for me to get back into dealing. I was depressed, and I deal with depression, and anyways, so it was tough, but I did get back into my shop. But that was a year off. I was dealing with making sure my brother-in-law was okay, and dealing with just internal stuff about it.
Yes, and that makes sense. And I've talked to other sellers too who say, coming back to Etsy and having a creative outlet helps with just dealing with things. And
yes. I mean, when I had the full-time job, when we moved up here, I was in the job for 12 years. When we moved up here to Northern Connecticut, the job was 2 hours away. So if not 2.5. So what I would do is stay down in that county and continued on my job until I could leave it and collect a pension or roll it over and have it. And so I would get up at 4:30 in the morning on Monday and drive into work to get into work at 7 a.m.
Whoa.
And I worked on my Etsy stuff during my lunch hour, and I thought nothing of it. I would bring big boxes of my magnets and pin backs, and I would, if I had stuff that I had to mail out, I got in the car and I went and mailed to the local post office, where I bumped into parents who chit-chatted with me, and I stood in line. And it's funny, I never felt angry about the situation at all. I just assumed, well, it is what it is.
Life. Yeah.
And then I came back to work after that, because for me, creating is a part of who I am. Yeah. It's like I have blonde hair and blue eyes. This is a part of who I am. Yeah. Not to do this does not work for me.
Yes.
And it's something that I think a lot of people don't understand. I feel there's 2 kinds of people in this world. There's appreciators and there's doers. And it's not that the appreciators aren't hard workers, but they're people who belong in the 9 to 5 or even in the day environment, structured environment. Yeah. And the rest of us are here. I can work within, and I had to in order to get a house and pay bills, but I never stopped doing this.
Yes, and I agree. I've had this conversation with other people outside of Etsy, and entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, and
Mm-mm.
working in an office isn't for everyone, but there are people that are created for each of those environments, who thrive there, who, that's where they
Mm-hmm.
need to be. And it's so important to figure out for yourself if that's where you need to be. And then there are people who, for whom a balance of both is their happy place, where working is good for them, to get out and socialize, but then also having a creative outlet on the side,
Mm-hmm.
where they still get to create and do stuff. Some people just call it like just having a side hustle, but
Yeah.
still earning money from a hobby that feeds you. I mean, feeds your soul, not like
Yeah.
real food.
Well, it's funny. I also like working around people. I'm a people person, which makes me so different from all my creative friends.
Mm-hmm.
All of them seem to be introverts,
Yes.
and I need to be around people. And
Yes.
this past week, I visited a friend who I used to work with many moons ago, who's a photographer and just wrote a children's book. And we were sharing and going over and giving feedback. And then I went down to a friend in Weston, Connecticut, who's a honeybee. She's a fellow illustrator, and she creates honey. And we gave each other feedback
Mm-hmm.
on our work. And I found that I've been more creative this week than any other week in a long time.
Yeah.
So I need that. I need that human connection.
Yes.
And that's what my work is for, especially my magnets and pinbacks. It's my way of connecting with people. And I think with me, it's because I'm part of a very small family unit. And right now it's just me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's part of a very small family unit. It wasn't a decision. It just
Happened.
is what it is.
Yeah.
And so this is my way of connecting.
Okay. So now, running two Etsy shops, and that's for one for your magnets and pinbacks, and one for your artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Did it make more sense to open a second shop, because running two shops can be um, overwhelming sometimes, and like you said, one might get neglected if another one is just taking up more time.
Right.
Did you ever think that having them under one roof might work better, or because the product lines are so different, it just made more sense to separate them out?
The product lines are totally different. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, my artwork is whimsical, but I like to think that I'm honing it to be whimsical but more sophisticated. Some are cuter. Some of my products are cuter than others, but it still has that little edge to it that my magnets and pinbacks have. But curiously enough, my artist friends don't get my written work. They just sort of ignore it. I even had one say, "Oh, don't do those, just do your art." And it's very frustrating because there's a whole community of people out there that get my work
Yes.
and buy it and see me as that. It's the problem of being a Gemini. I think you have two things going on at once.
Yes.
So I have to keep it separate. They wouldn't get it, and it would be reams of pages for them to click through.
Yeah.
And some people they like just different things. Um, I just find that that's what happens. It's a separation.
Okay.
Even though some of my friends have bought both things from me,
Mm-hmm.
the artist friends buy art from me. They don't buy the written word.
Okay. So, what do you consider yourself most, or what would be the best description you'd put for yourself? A maker, an artist, an illustrator. Which one do you think is most you?
I would say illustrator and writer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, writer too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about your Etsy journey. When did you first discover Etsy, and how?
Oh, golly, it was way back when they first opened up. I think it came on my computer horizon. And I thought about it and thought about it. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, I think what happened was I had to take a day job and quit illustrating because the market was not doing well. And that was a real frustration for me. I was really upset. I was depressed for 3 days because I was finally doing what I wanted to do full time. And too many people were signing the work for hire contracts. We wanted to get a house, and that was our first house. And my husband was in his own business. He had been downsized out a couple of times, and he started selling on eBay and doing very well.
Nice.
And yeah, and what happened? I actually got him into his business. But what happened is I had to quit it. Then I saw Etsy and I thought, okay, I'm not going to quit my creative life. I don't have to give it up. I've got this new venue, and that was it. And I put my art up and sold some pieces, but with the new day job, it was hard to create and do a day job. And so I switched over to my written word when I saw I could get magnets and pinbacks. Back then, it was only magnets offered. I had to use an outside vendor, have it shipped to me. I had a vendor who used cheap materials. They were starting to rust. It was a long, long process to get it right. And finally, I just make them myself now, print them out myself, and, make them here in my studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's when you took on the task of making everything yourself, did that change your pricing? I'm just curious.
No, it didn't.
Okay.
It didn't because when I looked at Etsy, I saw there are other humorous people online. There's one in particular who I really admire. I really admire Bean Forest, but there are a lot of people who are doing this, and I don't think it's coming from. I don't know that I see the same lines everywhere, and these people are more likely to charge only $1 for a magnet, and they live in the United States, and I don't know how they could afford it. And I just immediately priced mine $2 more and raised the price a little bit recently because I use archival inks. They won't fade.
Yes.
For anything that will be near a dishwasher, I double laminate, and because I do them myself, and because I'm wearing copper bracelets, because if I have a big order to get out, my wrists hurt.
Yes.
So I don't understand people who can charge so little. It is a small product, but they're doing themselves a disservice because they're still doing good work, whether they write their own copy or not. And, so.
Yeah. And that's like one of the is perennial the right words of selling on Etsy is getting the pricing right,
Yeah.
not pricing yourself into a loss just to make a sale.
Right. And, I do, sometimes I wonder, like, if some of these people are just coming on to Etsy to do a huge volume selling and then leave because their work it looks like a lot of other people who are earnestly selling on Etsy. And I realize that there's no way to monitor that, because if you say to someone, okay, to all people selling this particular product, you have to start at this level, this price, this is the price structure to start at, then you're price fixing. So it is confusing. But I hope for anyone hearing this that they will consider, even for low price products like mine, that they will consider that their time is important. And if they're getting tons of orders, but their risks are killing them, and they're barely eking out a profit, they do have to protect themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into making magnets and pin backs. Are you self-taught? Was it something you initially started doing as a hobby, or when you decided you wanted to have your own business, you were very intentional about this
Well,
particular product line?
I always, I'm known for my sense of humor,
Yeah.
and but most of my humor, if you really look at what I've written, most of it is about frustration.
Mhm.
And some of my best ideas came when I was in the day job, even when I was sitting at my desk and I'd scribble
Yes.
it down. Um, right now, the current political situation is
Giving
energizing
you
me
lots of
to
fodder.
write up a lot, and my feminist magnets are doing very, very well. But the magnets that was the offshoot. It was, I'm coming up with these ideas. What kind of product should I put it on? And magnets were the cheapest. Mugs are more expensive. I don't want to do t-shirts because I just have no interest in doing t-shirts.
Yeah.
I am going to be expanding into signs, though. I would like to do attractive signs with my brand of humor on it.
Oh, nice.
Because you see a lot of what is it, live, laugh, love signs around.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But I hung one up that I thought of, which was live, laugh, love, yada yada, and just I would like to do fun signs that are attractive with my trademark humor on it. I'm investigating that and how I'm going to do it, because it's just, I think of my work as brightening someone's day, but in a way that is unique.
Yes.
And so again, the magnets were just an offshoot. What can I afford to create?
Yeah.
Buying tons of mugs, can't afford it. T-shirts, nah. It's snarky humor or frustrated humor. I just don't want to put that on a T-shirt for someone to wear. I don't think they would, but I do think. I was
Well,
approached by a licensing agent about greeting cards, and I don't want to do. I've done greeting cards. That let someone else do that with their work. It's too saturated market, like jewelry.
okay. Well, yeah. Well, have you ever considered the world of print on demand?
Yes, I have, but then you have to be careful with that too. It all
Okay.
adds up, and when it's shipped to you, forget about it. You have to charge people even more to buy your product.
That's true.
And, so I know some illustrators that went that route, and it's just easier. We just had to buy a new printer, Epson printer, that is expensive, but we think the alternative just doesn't make business sense to us
Okay.
right now.
Speaking of which, I know you and I talked about around the time when you were shopping for a new printer.
Yep.
And so let's talk about your equipment, which is something we don't really talk about much on
Right.
the podcast. I'm curious, how did you go about selecting the particular printer that you ended up using? So you use an Epson.
Right.
Canon is their big competitor in the field, in this
Right.
space,
Yeah.
toe to toe. Did you have to, or did you have a chance to sample both, because those are pretty hefty investments? How did you
Um,
decide on the Epson as opposed to, say, the Canon?
Well, way back when I bought an Epson for my own prints, I wanted prints that wouldn't fade, because if you had your work on consignment somewhere, you didn't, or if you had a show, you didn't want them to suddenly, when you go to the doctor's office and all the lovely prints in the waiting room are faded to an ugly garish
Yes.
purple.
Yes.
I didn't want that to happen with my work.
Okay.
So back then, I'm lucky in the fact that my husband, who now has a museum and is in his own repair business, he used to work for Apple.
Mm.
So I have an engineer. I live with an engineer who can figure things out. I told him what I wanted, and we did online sleuthing, and he came up with Epson.
Okay.
Golly, that was back in the early 2000s. Then there are frustrations with it. They do clog. But another thing I would tell makers and illustrators and writers or anybody doing product is to join a Yahoo group of people who own who own a certain brand. They have one for Canon printers and they have one for Epson printers.
Okay.
And it came down between those two. And we went with Epson again because it was a known entity.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. I was just curious too because I know I remember at the Etsy Up conference, which now was 2 years ago, going on 2 years ago, and they had vendors in an exhibit hall, and Canon was there. And even though I hadn't considered buying a Canon, because I do some illustration, I don't sell it. It's just for me. I was used to using HP printers, which when you're talking about the kind of artwork you do, really you're looking at a Canon or an Epson. And so the Canon really stood out to me. So when you said you were buying the Epson, I was like, I need to ask her why she decided on that. Because of course the Canon people are going to, make you think Canon is the best in the world.
Well, there was another thing. Sorry to interrupt. Well, I get occasional emails from people posting on Epson, the Epson board from Yahoo. But in Canon, it was every day with people having issues. And I was like, I turned to my husband. I said, I really want to stick with Epson. I mean, it still has the clogging issues and things like that, but it's a known entity. And so that was why. Plus, there was someone online who steered me more towards Epson. It's someone from that sells papers and for Epsons and Canons, and she thought I would have less issues with Epson, but there are people who are very happy with their Canons. So this was a gut thing with me. Okay. So,
all right. So let's think back to when you opened your first Etsy shop. Do you remember when you got your first sale? How soon after opening your shop was it? And then how soon after that did you get the next sale?
You know what? I don't remember. Okay. I'm so sorry, but I don't remember. I just remember, I wish I did. I'm just that kind of person. Maybe I'm a little too right-brained, but I just don't remember. And I don't remember how it started coming in, but I know that I was placing them in local shops in the town I used to live in, and they were flying off the shelves too. So,
okay. So let's talk about your day-to-day. What does a typical day look like when it comes to running your business, and how do you manage your time?
Well, as my husband says, I'm not very good at time management, and most creative people, I don't want to stereotype, but it's a struggle for me and some of my artist friends. But we get up around 5:30, 6:30, and I work on the computer returning emails and things like that in the morning, and then, have breakfast and I go into the studio. And if I'm burnt out, I work downstairs, watch a movie or something, and do stupid work, mindless tasks, which is what I learned from my old day job. A coworker and I, when we were so burnt out, we did what we called mindless tasks, which was cleaning up or something like that.
Right.
For me, it's cutting down cardboard because I sandwich my stuff between cardboard before putting in a padded envelope and sending out. Things like that.
Okay.
Mindless tasks.
And then do you have a day that you set aside just for making, or do you make time every day to create?
Well, I make time every day to put out orders, but I am the creating, like I thought of two good gag lines on my way to the post office. And I hope I remember them, because that's pretty much how it comes to me. But in the new year, I want to be more concerted and sit down and really create. And I'm doing that with my artwork now. I'm
Yeah.
sitting down every day. So in the morning, and instead of doing orders in the morning, I'm doing, unless I have a huge bunch of them, I do something creative and then switch over. Transitioning is hard for me to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to be done. It's very easy just to stick with the magnets and pin backs because it's much easier product to create and get out the door.
Yeah. And do you find that between when you first started selling on it, actually I should ask this, for your Smirking Goddess shop, it says you've
Yeah.
been on Etsy since 2008. Did you start selling right when you opened the shop?
I think that probably happened.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I guess if I weeded through all that, yeah, I did start selling, but I noticed as time went on, I was really selling at Christmas time
Yeah.
because people want something funny. So I'm actually going to be promoting my shops as being holiday oriented, and
Okay.
I promote the magnet and pinback as being great stocking stuffers. And so I'm fairly busy from October to December. Yeah.
Okay. I see. And I guess you could capitalize on other holidays too.
Yes, I'm going to be doing that with my art. I will be I've decided, I've taken webinars, I've done all kinds of things. And the bottom line with an illustrator, I think, is to simply create and put it on Instagram, put it on Pinterest and Facebook and Twitter, and just keep producing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And it's hard, but it has to be done. And the lure is always to go back to what's easier, what comes easier for me. But I can't keep doing that.
Yeah, I know. I have the same problem too. It's like, oh, okay, I need to expand and do other things, but
Mm.
let me just be comfortable for a minute, and then you just stay
Yes,
where you're comfortable and don't
it's
grow
very,
as much as you should.
yeah, it's very hard to make the transition. And there's a lot of illustrators that have uh, that are able to do that. And so I've collected some links of some who I really admire, even if they work in total mixed media and do a variety of things in their shop. I'm studying them because I find them such an inspiration.
Okay. Now, do you spend any time looking at other shops that sell similar items, or do you keep away just because of the risk of maybe getting someone else's idea into your head?
No, I do look at shop, not at magnets and pinbacks much. I just don't. But as far as art illustration, because I've purchased some art from time
Mm-hmm.
to time on Etsy, I look at it because I just love looking at it. Instead, there is an illustration museum in Massachusetts that I've yet been to, a children's book
Oh,
illustrators museum, but in a way, Etsy becomes my virtual museum for me to see the work and just get inspired, not to copy, but
yeah.
to get inspired that this person is sitting down all alone in their studio, and if
Yes.
they can do it, I can go back and finish something.
Yes, I do the same thing too. And it's funny that you use that phrasing because that's exactly what I say to myself. So I'll go and I'll look at vintage sellers on Etsy and I think,
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, this person sat down, took all these pictures, wrote
Yep.
all these descriptions, and now has this many listings. And I'm
Right.
just looking at a pile of stuff that I haven't even touched. And that
Yep.
kind of spurs me on, because,
Yeah.
particularly with vintage, it's harder to come across the same the exact same items in too
Oh
many
yeah.
places. So
Yeah.
it's more for the, what's the word, the inspiration to move my butt to do something, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the one thing I really like about Etsy is I feel that it's immediate. If you're feeling like you're in a rut or feeling kind of down, you can get on Etsy and realize, well, this person might be feeling down, but they're doing it. And
Yeah.
in most cases, a lot of them can't afford not to do it.
Not to,
And
yeah.
we all need to pay bills
Mhm.
and to sell, and it's that's what really gets you plugged in and doing it. But it's also to create a balance between what makes money faster and brings in sales, and to go back and create something that's going to be a harder sell, but it's something, again, that's a part of you, of who you are.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Let's talk about how you promote your Etsy shop. What
Hmm.
what do you do specifically to get traffic into your shop or to get attention or eyes on your products? Do you focus mainly on social media? Do you write a blog, or do you do something completely different?
Well, I have a blog, but I don't write on it as much as I should. It's not where it's the focus isn't there. I like Instagram. That's my favorite social media because it's so instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed I get a fair amount of hits from Pinterest. And for my husband's, from the website I built for our museum, I get a few hits coming from which my husband manages. So, but I do like Instagram, and I'm focusing more on that. I have two accounts, one for my art and one for my written word. Now, Twitter, I'm on there, and Twitter became my vent forum where I, got so upset about the political climate, I would post things. And the thing that I don't understand is I have a couple of famous people following me, and I don't understand what they see in me. I seldom post, and I feel guilty about it, as a matter of fact. And
Really?
yeah, because I haven't earned it. I haven't earned it.
Well,
And
what do you think you'd have to do to earn it other than just
I think I should be trying out my funny written skills on Twitter, and write something funny every day and post it. Then I would have earned it once I got a following. But instead, it's just too easy to say for me to show my distaste for the behavior of people in the White House right now. So I don't advertise that I'm on Twitter, and
okay?
that's like an adjustment. But for Instagram, I'm going to start working harder at getting better photos up.
Mm-hmm.
I never realized until I took a webinar how important photos are on Instagram. So I'm working on that, and I have faith that that and Pinterest will probably, and Facebook will encourage people to start visiting the new shop in the
Okay.
future.
You've
I mean, the
mentioned
old the
Mhm.
old new shop.
The old new shop, yes.
Mhm.
You've mentioned a webinar a couple of times. Is it one particular webinar that you're referring to? And if so, can you share it with us? Or are they different webinars that you've taken on
I've
different topics?
I've taken different ones.
Okay.
The last one was Lisa Jacobs on
On
Creative
Creative
Live.
Live? Okay.
Yeah, I like her a lot. She made me feel a lot better about my photographs.
Mm.
She, it's funny, a lot of online gurus are so busy spouting stuff at you, like, I know it all, do this, do that. But she's more human in what she does, and that's what I need. She put up a bunch of her lousy photographs when she first started on
Mm-hmm.
Etsy. And I swear that also motivated me to go back to the drawing table, because you get tired of being spoken to by the all perfect person. And
Yes.
my humor is about not being perfect, and try, you just get tired of that. And uh, she was laughing about her photos, and we were laughing with her. And the fact that she stuck with it, whereas I'm the kind of person I would say, in my head, it'd be like, I'm never going to be good at this. That's
Yeah.
how I respond in my head. So to see someone who did get better at it really helped me a lot.
Oh, good. And for anyone who doesn't know, Creative Live is, how would you describe it?
It's
Like,
online tutorials.
yes.
There are other online marketplaces that are good. I also took a course, the gal that does Launch
Grow Joy?
Joy. Yes, she's very good. I mean, she
Yes.
knows her stuff. She really knows her stuff. She really is strong in teaching you how to get into gift guides, and she's good for that. And yeah, there were others, but I found that some, after a while, they were just blathering at me, or I'd have the earplugs in and I'd fall asleep. And so you really need someone who connects
Who
to the
speaks,
public, as
right?
it speaks to
Who
me,
speaks to
speaks to
you?
us. Yeah.
Yes. And I know different people speak to different people. Like there are some people that just on an individual basis, one person can relate better to them than another. Because I found that too with
Yeah.
myself. There are some people I can listen to continuously. And there are
Mhm.
some people that, I listen to for a few minutes and realize I'm not connecting with you mentally. So,
Mm.
and the information might
Yeah.
be good, but
Yeah.
there's not that connection that
Mhm.
you would hope would keep you engaged with what they're saying.
Right. There's another gentleman I want to take a webinar from, Corey Huff, the Abundant Artist, and I put it off because I wasn't ready to do it. But I'm also interested in taking one of his webinars because he is very focused on teaching artists that they don't have to be starving artists and
Yeah,
lowball
I've
themselves.
heard of his program, and I think I met him at a conference once before he had the program.
Yeah.
And I will link to all these resources. So if anyone wants to go check them out, I'll link to Creative Live, Launch Grow Joy. I believe it's Andrea Ayers. I think is her
Yes.
name. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She's very smart.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah. As
And
is Lisa and Corey.
Corey
So
Hoff.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So going back to social media, do you use Etsy's? You know how when you do a listing, Etsy has the buttons that you can click to post directly to social media. Do you use that tool, or do you post directly on each platform?
Oh, golly. On Facebook, I post directly, and I don't know why I do that. But for Pinterest, I post from Etsy.
Okay.
Yes. I plan to do it more from Etsy. I've got to cut down on this. I've got to do it more directly.
Yes. I mean, there's a benefit to doing it directly from Etsy in that you get that direct link back to the product. So when
Right.
someone sees that post, it takes them directly to that product. One of the things I worry about, which is not really a big deal because I use that to post, like when I do a listing, I'll use that and I'll post it to Pinterest and on Twitter, etc. Is and this is a problem that I have, is always reading on the internet, how you should do things exactly right. So like with Pinterest, they have these dimensions that they say are preferred, and they have to be tall and long and certain height and all. And then I worry that when I post from Etsy to Pinterest, it's not exactly, it doesn't fit those dimensions per se. I still get traffic coming back from Pinterest, but when you read about how you get more engagement, or it stays on their feed better, or it shows up better in people's feeds if you follow those guidelines, I wonder about whether or not it's worth it to take the extra time to craft an image specifically for, say, Pinterest with those dimensions, which then goes into, the time invested in promoting that one product.
Right.
So it's a mouse wheel for me.
Yeah, well, I do feel better about doing it directly. Instagram is very quick, which is
Yes.
nice.
Yes,
And
yes.
so that's a no-brainer. But for Facebook or Pinterest, Lisa Jacobs, and I'm not going to quote her because I think people should take her webinar. I don't know her, so but she said something very valuable about why people should use Pinterest.
Okay.
And Facebook, I do mostly to get feedback from people who've purchased my work before and from friends,
Mm-hmm.
and just to establish again who I am as a person, which everybody does on Facebook, but part of who I am is being an illustrator and a writer. Um, and I have a business page on Facebook, and I would like to explore maybe selling some stuff uh, on there. But right now, it's been Facebook. I am getting some people from Facebook coming over to Etsy. So I'm going to start being more consistent. I think that the answer is, even if you do it, if you have to do it directly, the answer is maybe just post twice a week or once a week. And I don't know if posting every day will get you a faster or larger following, but there's just so much we can do in a week.
Yeah.
When I'm creating, when you're filling orders or creating art, you just have so much time. So I do wonder what the answer is to that. How many times does a successful creative on Etsy post to social media?
Yes. I don't know. Social media is like this big behemoth for me.
Yes. And it's also, I mean, there's been many times where, you sign up with someone to and their blog, and you get so many emails, it's annoying. So maybe there's such thing as oversaturating too. So maybe once a week is fine. And it also lets the public know that what you do takes time.
Yeah, for sure. I know there are times when I go through phases of just unsubscribing from everything because I just feel like I'm getting too much information.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
More, huh?
Well, I created a third email account for my husband and I to sign petitions to get them off of, because I have two Etsy shops. I have two separate emails. I wish I could use only one email for my
Oh,
Etsy
I
shop, but
wish we could. Yes.
yeah, yes, I really do. But I have two separate emails for that. And I just can't have you sign a petition and then everybody else comes flooding through. So I created a third one just for that,
Yeah.
that I go to like once a month, and I weed through and I decide which ones I had to sign or most immediate, or which ones I already signed. And that's how I do it, and it's, it's my recommendation to everybody else.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I like that idea. So then at least that way you have your premium email inbox
Right.
where
Yeah.
whatever
Hmm.
comes in there gets your first attention and then you can
Right.
deal with the junk after. Should do
Yeah.
that. That's a good idea.
The customers come first. And
Yes.
for all my tutorials, I usually sign up on my second email account, because my goal is to keep just the first one focused on things that I've ordered, and deals on art supplies and magnets and stuff like
Hmm.
that, and orders from customers. That's
Okay.
it.
I have one last question on the whole social media and blogging thing. If you had to streamline your social media activities and had to whittle down to, say, two platforms that you would focus on for shop promotion,
Mm-hmm.
and in this sense I consider blogging social media because it is kind of you getting the word out, what two
Mm-hmm.
would you narrow it down to?
Instagram, and probably Instagram and Pinterest.
Okay.
Even though I'm more addicted to Facebook, Instagram and Pinterest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I'm just
Great.
curious. Yes, because I always toy with the idea of leaving, you know, some social media channels just so I can focus on others and just be better at them. Because I
Yes.
feel like
Well,
I'm spread thin and not doing any really well.
right. Yeah. Well, Instagram again is more immediate,
Yeah.
and Pinterest, I got the highest amount of hits from all social media from Pinterest.
Mm.
So that says something to me.
Yeah.
But I'm so used to Facebook because I've been on it for so long. But I used to say back when MySpace was around, MySpace was for musicians, Twitter was for writers, and Facebook was for visual artists. That's
Mm.
how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think Instagram is for creatives,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more immediate. And Facebook, I think, has taken a back seat to that. And Pinterest, I'm going to work harder on it this year, and I'm trying to get on some boards. That's hard. I don't understand how you get on someone else's
Oh
board.
yeah.
you know?
I think I'm on a couple, and I think it was by mistake that I ended up
Yeah.
there. But yes, I've heard that to really
Mm.
get full benefit of Pinterest, you need to be on boards. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I emailed a few people, never heard back. And,
Mm,
you don't know if it went in a spam folder or what,
yeah.
but I have to understand a little bit more about approaching people on Pinterest. In the meantime, I'm on there. So if anyone wants to join one of my boards, feel
Okay,
free.
and I'll link to Suzanne's social media accounts. Well, Pinterest and Instagram and
Oh,
Facebook,
great.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Facebook. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. Well, glad we made the connection here.
Now,
And
mhm.
I was going to say we survived the mailman coming and Piper
Oh, yes.
barking. Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
before I let you go, I know we're getting to almost an hour on this.
Yeah.
What is a lesson that, or any advice, I shouldn't say lesson, but advice that you would have for a new seller who is still just trying to find their feet on Etsy? What would you tell that person?
Oh, golly. Okay. What I would tell them, first of all, is um, keep it unique, and don't get discouraged. I mean, I got discouraged when I first started. I had someone else assembling my magnets and stuff, and he used terrible uh, quality paper, and there were issues, and I finally had to get rid of him. And that's when I brought it in house to assemble everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's hard, but don't get discouraged, because if you're someone who has to express yourself through a venue of Etsy, you've got to do it. And that, to me, that's the bottom line. I have to express myself,
Yeah.
so I have to do this. So I get discouraged a lot, but you have to work through it.
Yeah. And are there any other tools or resources that help you in running your business? We've talked about Creative
Yes.
Live and Launch
Yes.
Grow Joy, but any
Yeah.
others?
Yeah. Well, it's local. I'm part of the Nutmeg Collective on Etsy. It's a Connecticut team, and it's one of the few Etsy teams that's really proactive. It's run, the co-leaders are very, and leader, Kristen Skelton, is very hardworking, very professional, and you do pay dues to be a member of
Really?
this. But
Oh.
they did such a great job of organizing this team, which she took over. It had a different name. I think it was in 2014. She took over and built it up. And they they even now have in our town. I live in the oldest town in Connecticut, our house was built in the 1600s. So it's slowly becoming a destination point. And she has started a pop-up market at a local bakery, Get Baked, and I've participated in some. So she's very serious at, she's hosted, we have on Facebook our own secret group. People are willing to help each other. Sometimes I'll ask a question, someone will come through. And it represents, the team represents people from all over Connecticut, and it's a juried team, which is also something that I like.
Yeah.
Because I feel you need to work hard to earn something like this. And they became so recognized, I guess, by Etsy that a couple of years ago, Etsy came out to interview her and a few of us in Middletown to ask questions. So, you know, if you become part of a team or start a team, it's hard work.
Yes.
But if you have co-leaders that are supportive, and if you charge people some dues, you might be able to make inroads and branding yourself in Connecticut. This team probably is the first to be connected by local shows and selling venues, definitely.
Okay.
A lot of sellers get into Connecticut Magazine gift guide every Christmas because, you know, it's a go-to.
That must take a lot of footwork to get that type of exposure and attention to the team members.
Yes, they have a website, a blog, and, you know, so there's a lot of teams on Etsy that are dormant, and pretty much all of them I ignore. I'm on Etsy Rank. Now, that's a resource I do use.
Yes.
Etsy Rank, I think, is good. Anthony is very responsive. So that's good. So as far as teams, that's those two. If you're a nutmegger, you know, or check in your own state, on Etsy, see if there's a team like, there's a New York Etsy team that's terrific, and see if there's someone who really, if there's a really good one out there for you.
Okay. That's good to know, because I know, like you said, a lot of Etsy teams are dormant, and sometimes some of them are not as, what's the word? I know what the word I'm looking for is, but what it sounds like this team captain for the Nutmeg Collective is doing is just fantastic. I mean, that's what you want. You want to get that kind of exposure, not just exposure to other Etsy sellers that might not be your target market, but to the wider world where your customers actually do reside. And I would love to connect with her and just talk about that, because we need to learn more about, you know, just how to make teams more effective. I just think they aren't as effective or efficient as they were intended to be. Right.
It's Kristen Skelton. Her shop is Milo and Molly, I believe. Right. Okay. So, you know, feel free to give her a shout. And, you know, I'm paying more attention to her call outs on our Nutmeg Collective on Instagram. So I respond to it more, because again, when you pay for membership, you take something more seriously.
Yes. I'm blown away by you know, just the idea that, you know, it's a paid membership team, and when you invest in something, you take it more seriously than if you don't have anything invested in it. And it doesn't matter how much. If you're putting money on the table, you're just going to take something a bit more seriously, I think.
Right. And I understand. I'm sure there's a lot of creatives out there who are saying to me, but I can't afford. And, you know, my heart goes out to them. But, you know, the reason why I say this is I ran some online groups and got sick and tired of offering way too many of my skills for free because I was too afraid to charge. And then they got so used to having someone do things for them. It's sort of like, if you join a local arts council, you have to be careful. We have a very good one in town. I'm not a member, but I belong to one where they knew I could do graphics, and I had a Mac. And so suddenly everybody became lame when it came to doing flyers and, and so you've got to protect yourself, especially artists do have to protect themselves. But if there's any way, that you can benefit from taking a webinar or joining a proactive team, do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely do it.
Great advice. Suzanne, what's the best way people can get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Oh, connect, you mean, well, they could email me. They can convo me through my Etsy shop, Smirking Goddess, or the second one, Suzanne Urban Art. They can message me through Facebook, or, I think those are the three, or email me. I'm SuzanneUrbanDesigns@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to say hello.
Okay. And I will have links to everywhere you can reach Suzanne, her Etsy shops, so you can send her a convo, as well as her social media accounts, so Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, so you can go connect with her on social media as well. Suzanne, thank you so much for being my guest and for sharing your knowledge and sharing your Etsy story.
Oh, well, thank you, Jama. I appreciate, again, your contacting me. And if you're ever out in Connecticut, come on by. Connecticut, come on by. Sorry, I flubbed up that.
It probably won't be until you guys don't have all that snow anymore.
That's going to be a while. We're in a deep freeze here.
Oh, my goodness. Well, stay warm.
You too, if it's needed.
Okay. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.